Hello and welcome back to the Midlife Awakening with Odelia. I'm your host, Odelia, and I'm so glad that you're here because today's conversation is one that is going to stay with you long after it ends. My guest today is Sam Naughton, founder of Cocoon, which is a midwife-led pregnancy scan clinic in Harrogate that exists because of unimaginable loss. After Sam and her husband lost their baby, Willow, at 12 weeks, she experienced firsthand how cold, clinical, and dehumanizing aftercare can be inside an overstretched system. Instead of letting that pain stay, she turned it into purpose, walking away from a successful corporate career to build the kind of space she wished had existed for her. Warm, private, midwife-led, and built entirely around the woman in the room. In this episode, we talk about pregnancy loss and the anxiety that follows a subsequent pregnancy, what's missing from maternity care in the UK right now, the moment Sam knew she had to build something different, and how grief, this time for her best friend Emma, had pushed Cocoon into an entirely new chapter, a preventative health and diagnostic clinic for everyone called Science and Soul. If you ever sat in a waiting room feeling like just another number, if you've ever been told to be grateful and move on, or if you ever wondered whether you're too much for wanting more, this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Midlife Awakening podcast. I'm your host, Odelia. This is a podcast about transformation for women who are waking up to who they really are while navigating everything that comes with midlife. And I want you to know I'm on this journey right alongside you. This is the show where we explore everything from the spiritual tools that can help us in our daily practices to healing modalities that we can use to heal what we've been carrying for so long, to the everyday midlife topics that a midlife woman faces, like perimenopause, finances, career changes, and so much more. Each week we go deeper into what it means to heal, to awaken, and to finally become the most authentic version of yourself. I'm so glad that you found your way here. Sam, welcome to the Midlife Awakening podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you on today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So I'd love to start with you. So where were you a few years ago, your midlife awakening experience?
It's a big question, isn't it? And it's sometimes tricky to know where it all began, really, because it felt more like a series of events, really. So I guess when we go back to the start, I had just got married and realised that my husband and I had realised that we wanted to have another baby. And at that point, I was in a very successful corporate career working for Betty's and Taylor's on the Taylor's side, which is Yorkshire tea and Taylor's coffee. And I was head of brand communications there, so I had a very good, very stable, successful career. Travelled all over the world, went to the most incredible places. So Rwanda, Kenya, Peru, Australia, on the England cricket tour. And, it was just an insane job. It was brilliant. And Betty's and Taylor's is such a great company to work for. It's known for being a brilliant company to work for. They look after you. So I was very settled and very content. And then, Ben and I decided that we were going to try for a baby, and it had taken us a little bit of time to get to that point, and we actually became pregnant. And unfortunately, after about 10 weeks, we found out that the baby had died. And, that was just not something that was on my radar at all. It hadn't kind of occurred to me that something like that might happen to me. I'd had friends that it had happened to, but it never crossed my mind that that might be a thing for me, because I'd had a baby 10 years before that, Ruby, and everything was absolutely fine with that pregnancy, no problems at all. So, it had never ever crossed my mind that that might be a thing. So when it did happen, it really kind of knocked me for six. We were actually fortunate enough to become pregnant again quite quickly afterwards. But what came with that was just a huge amount of worry and anxiety and toilet trauma and all of the rest of the things that happen when you go through such a traumatic experience. But I made it through that pregnancy, and while I was...
I can imagine that must be a very difficult experience of pregnancy the second time round.
Hugely,
the first time
hugely
round,
different.
like you say, when we tend to fall pregnant, we're in this bubble, aren't we? Because everything's going to be fine and we're going to have a beautiful baby at the end of it. And then, something like this quite tragic happens and it really
Mm.
alters your perception of reality.
Oh, 100%. This isn't how it should be. As soon as you see, a line on a stick, essentially, you've thought years into the future, haven't you? You've started planning, you've started thinking about what that child will be. And when that doesn't happen, a lot of the trauma for me came from the fact that the choice of that had been taken from me. And I really struggle if I don't have a say in things. And I found that really, really difficult. And just the anxiety that came along from the fact that, 1 minute everything was fine, and the next minute, literally in a heartbeat, it wasn't fine. And how can you kind of make sense of that? How can you continue in like minute to minute, knowing that that might be a thing again, and you might
Yeah.
have to go through that all over again?
So for you, what was it like? Did you go for a scan and there was no heartbeat? Did you bleed? What was the
So we were actually due to be in Bath for the weekend. We were going away for the weekend, and the day before, I'd started to get a little bit of kind of brown spotting. And I spoke to my midwife, who was absolutely incredible. And she just said, look, I don't think it's anything to worry about at this stage. It's very common that that happens at this stage. Don't worry, just go, just try not to think about it too much. And the next day, I had a little bit more, and went to sleep absolutely fine that night and woke up the next morning and got in the shower. And then all of a sudden, I lost a lot of blood very quickly. And it's almost like in that moment, and it's kind of strange to say, but I just knew everything wasn't okay. I felt part of me leave my body, and my legs kind of almost buckled, really. And my husband and I went along to the A&E department at the hospital, and we were told that it was probably just a hematoma coming away, because my cervix looked completely intact, and they couldn't scan me because it was a weekend, so there was nothing else they could do really. But I think I just knew in my heart that it wasn't okay. So when we came back up to Harrogate, I got an appointment at the early pregnancy assessment unit, and that's when we were told that unfortunately that there was no heartbeat.
That must have been very difficult in that moment.
It was really difficult, and I think, they can't just confirm it, unfortunately, with one appointment. They give you a bit of time and you have to come back and be scanned again, and it's a lot. So we had to go through the process of unfortunately having, a procedure. And what I found in that moment was it was the tail end of COVID as well. So it was really tricky because Ben wasn't allowed to come with me. I felt very, very alone. The gynae nurse was incredible. She gripped onto my hand the whole time. But what I found in the moment with the consultant was that it was incredibly dehumanizing. They were quite cold, and they were using language like product of conception, and that to me, Willow, we named our baby Willow. Willow was my baby. They were much more than a product of conception to me. But it just felt very, very, dehumanizing, cold. And I think something changed in me that day, which has kind of led to where I am now.
You turned your pain into purpose. You took this experience and you turned it into something more purposeful.
I try, yes. So I was still working for Betty's and Taylor's at this point, and I was pregnant with Albie, and I just started to think, I mean, because my pregnancy was so filled with anxiety, I went for a lot of private scans, a lot. And I didn't go back to the same place because I thought they would think that I was crazy. So I went to a lot of different ones. And every place that I went to, I found to be problematic for me in some way. And everyone's different and everyone's experience is different. But what I found was either they were incredibly clinical, overly clinical, cold. They were either pink or blue, and there was pictures of babies everywhere. There were heartbeat bears trying to escape from cabinets, and then in some of the places there were actually like beautifully decorated racks of baby clothes, hand and footprints being done in the reception areas by new mums and their new babies. And all I could think about the whole time was, I'm going to go into this room and I don't even know if my baby's going to be alive. And if they're not, and I get the worst possible news in this room, knowing how that feels, I'm going to have to walk back out into this waiting room full of people. I'm going to have to go up to this desk and pay for this scan. And, it's just going to be horrific. And I just thought, why isn't there somewhere that is midwife-led, that is staffed by people who really, really know their stuff inside and out, that are properly qualified to take care of me. And if the worst happens, there's someone there to scoop me up and talk me through what happens next, and take some of that pain, some of that difficulty in the onward process away. And there actually genuinely wasn't anywhere, not even just locally, but anywhere in the UK that I could find that offered somewhere where you could have a proper ultrasound done by someone who was qualified to do that scan, that had midwifery support, that had talking therapy, postnatal care. There was nothing. So I just thought, well, there should be. So that's when I created Cocoon in my mind, and yes, went on to have Albie, and at that point started to have a conversation with my midwife, because I'd been discharged from her at this point, and she had been incredible all the way through. So Kate had been my midwife when we lost Willow, and then she was also my midwife again when we were pregnant with Albie, and she got me through that pregnancy. Nothing was too much trouble for her. So I kind of started to have this conversation about what my vision was, and she said, "You are insane. I'm in." So she joined me as our lead midwife, and we found our sonography team. So we've got Katie, who's our lead sonographer. We've got Gemma and we've got Penny. We've had the same team since we started 2 years ago, and they are just the most incredible, empathetic team of women. I just feel so lucky, and I don't know how I got so lucky with those women, honestly. And since then, we've had Abby join us as well as another midwife, and then Jane from Taking Baby Steps, who provides all of our talking therapy as well. She's actually a former bereavement midwife who also recognised that there wasn't enough support for women out there who were going through these horrific experiences. And so she provides free of charge talking therapy, as many sessions as people need for anyone who's experienced loss at any stage. So she's one of our non-exec directors now, and I'm a non-exec director for Taking Baby Steps. We're very, very, very closely linked. And it just means the world to be able to provide that support across the board for people going through pregnancy, particularly after loss.
Yeah, I truly want to commend you. I mean, I think this is a great project, and I think really women's health is not taken seriously, especially when they're pregnant, especially after they've had their babies. It's always a quick fix solution, I think. And talking about my own personal experience as well, postnatal depression and anxiety, it's just give the person the pill and go home and enjoy your baby is what I was told.
It's very damaging.
And so And so, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that when you lose a child, there's also the lack of support. So it really sounds like you realized that there was no protocol to handle that, and you decided to take it upon yourself to create a safe space for women to be able to feel safe, especially if they've been pregnant before. And like you say, you have that anxiety, right? So every scan becomes a traumatic experience, really, because you have that in the back of your mind, don't you, that something bad's going to happen.
Absolutely. And it's the small details, really. So when we lost Willow, the room that we went into, it was hot, it was cramped, it was, the radio is super loud because there's not enough soundproofing. So they have it loud so you can't hear the conversations that are going on in the room next door. And, and then you go through, and it's not anybody's fault, it's the NHS really. Like, I absolutely love the NHS, but it's underfunded, it's under-resourced, and people are doing their best. But there's all of this, it's a hugely hot topic in the media at the moment, as it should be. That there've been all of these recommendations that have been put forward, 700 recommendations that have been put forward, and it's just not happening. How many more inquiries do we need to have for women to be listened to and for these recommendations to be put in place? But like I say, it's the detail of things, isn't it? We go into a scan room and you're looking up at the ceiling and there's a leak in one of the ceiling tiles, right? And then when I was pregnant with Albie, I go back into the same scan room and I'm looking at the same leak on the ceiling and I'm listening to the same, and it's triggering in so many ways. The smells, everything that you're going into is a place where you've experienced severe trauma. So, what I wanted to create was just a space where women could go and they could just walk in the door, they could take a deep breath, it smells good, there's space, there's nobody else around, because we have longer length appointments, half an hour appointments, which means that it's unlikely that you're going to encounter anyone else in clinic at all. So it feels very safe, it feels very private, and whatever happens in that room, in the ultrasound room, that at the point of your scan you're going to be taken care of, and everything after is going to be done for you. You don't have to worry about calling EPAL yourself, going back to your GP, all of those things. We will make that referral on your behalf. So and that in the moments, in the weeks, in the months afterwards, we have a service that's completely free of charge, where we will scoop you up and we will take care of you for as long as you need. And for me, it's obvious, and it's something that should happen across the board. It should be a non-negotiable for any ultrasound clinic that opens, because when I was looking into this service, I was looking at, qualifications and things, and you actually don't need any qualifications to be, performing these scans in some of these scan clinics. And that's such a huge worry for me, that ultimately there might be somebody there who's done a weekend course, and they're not qualified to take care of you. So, when you're thinking, or when people are thinking about these, this reassurance that they're looking for, and they're potentially thinking about going, for an ultrasound to check, and they're thinking, oh, right, this is a bargain, it's £65 or £75, it's a bargain for a reason, and that kind of thing isn't really what you should be scrimping on if it's reassurance that you're looking for. So, there's a lot in there, isn't there, around what is needed. And I think tighter regulations, more funding through the NHS, it's all things that should be happening.
Wow, that is actually shocking to learn, that these places, that there's a lack of regulation. That is, wow. I had no idea. I had no idea.
It's so
you
true.
sort of put your trust in, you put your trust in a place because it looks legitimate, and you're thinking it looks all above board. But, meanwhile, not necessarily,
No.
to the level of what you should actually be getting, the level of care that you should actually be getting.
Yeah. So when you go in, you really should be asking to see people's qualifications, and they will not mind showing you if it's a clinic that, values qualifications and values experience. And what you should be asking for is my sonographer an advanced practitioner sonographer? And that means that they have been through university, they've done a postgraduate degree, and even ask if they have experience working in an NHS setting, because that is an absolute bare minimum for us, is that they need to have all of those things in place. So the reason why our ultrasound scans are more expensive is because we pay our people properly, according to their experience. And I just think it's so, so important, because in that moment they can see things, they can find things, they can explain things. They can spend that time with you to make sure that you're getting the very, very best care and the information that you need. You're not transactional to us. It's not about getting in and getting out and, making a quick buck. It's about making sure that you've got the care that you need. And I think it's all down to the fact that it's grounded in experience. It's grounded in a truth that I felt like I don't have any medical experience, but I've got an incredible team of people around me who do. But what I have is that lived experience and knowing that there is a better way, and there should be a better way for women.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And I love what you said, that it's, not transactional, because, I mean, gosh, so many things in life tend to be transactional, and you would think something as important as carrying a new life, you would think there would be some kind of protection and safety around that. So it sounds like you've thought of all the little details, and you've taken this really seriously in setting up Cocoon, for women coming in the door to have the best possible experience and to be in safe and good hands.
Yeah, just, everything from start to finish, really. We've tried to think about the whole journey. And the clinic itself, everything is neutral, grounding, even the curation of our scents in clinic. The things that people say the most when they walk in is, oh my gosh, it smells amazing in here. And they go upstairs and it's like, oh, it's like a spa because the bed is super comfortable. Quite like to have a nap in there sometimes. And we use fresh towels, and it just everything feels like more of the kind of experience that you would want to have. So yeah, we like to think that we've thought of everything, but we also regularly ask people what more can we do? How can we support you in the room? What do you need? How would you prefer for us to talk to you about this? What language do you prefer? It's all like, because everyone's different, right? I don't like the phrase product of conception because I find it dehumanizing. So I wouldn't personally want someone to say that to me. But other people deal with things in a different way, and that's absolutely fine if that's the language that you want us to use, because it helps this experience be easier for you at a time when it's incredibly difficult. Then we are happy to use whatever language you want us to use, because everybody's different, everybody's individual, and that's fine too.
That's amazing. And that's really what it is. It's creating that individual experience, and that's really important.
So,
So you started this in 2022, right?
oh gosh, what year are we
Is it
in now?
2020?
2022.
In
I got
2026.
we're 20. Honestly, the years are flying. The other day I wrote 1997 on something. I'm like, where have those years
Oh my
gone?
goodness.
I know. So what am I thinking? Yes. So Albie was born in 2022. So I got the keys in February 2023, and then it took us a full year to do the renovation on the building and to get our CQC sign off. So CQC is the put my teeth back in, Care Quality Commission, and they are our regulator. So they regulate all of our activity and make sure that we're safe to open and to be operating. So yeah, it took us quite a long time to get through all of that process just because they were so behind after COVID. And then we opened the doors pretty much a year to the day after getting the keys. So we've been open for 2 years now, and we're just about to open a second site, which is just up the road, which is more around, it's for everybody. So it's not just pregnancy. Pregnancy is just going to be one thing that we offer. This is more about a wider level of diagnostic and screening. So it's literally for everybody. And that really came about because, gosh, I sound like an absolute harbinger of doom, but unfortunately, I lost my best friend to metastatic breast cancer about 18 months ago. And she was the most incredible human you will ever meet, the coolest person I will ever meet. And she was only a week older than me, and I'm 45 now. So she was only 43 when she died, and it's no age. So the more I went through that whole grieving process, again, a little spark, a little something came out of that, which was like, in this country, we are very reactive when it comes to healthcare. So the British stiff upper lip means that, we won't go to the doctors unless there's something crazy wrong with us, right? Whereas in other countries, like across Europe and beyond, it's more of a preventative healthcare model, right? So people just go for an annual checkup, and they have all sorts of things, all sorts of tests, and make sure that they're on a good path. And that it's just a much more sensible way of looking at it, in my opinion. So that's what we're going to be doing. So it's a huge diagnostic and screening program. So hormone profiling, cancer panels, broad range of ultrasound, that'll be our speciality. But also we're calling it science and soul. So there's the scientific side of it, but there's also the soul nourishing element of it. So everything holistically, really. So yoga, breath work, nutrition, personal training, it's everything that kind of feeds that side of you, counselling, therapy, So you've got the actual diagnostic tests running alongside the holistic side of things. So yes, that's going to be opening in about 3 or 4 weeks, which is absolutely terrifying, but also feels like a really good step. If we can help one person get to treatment quicker, and if we can help one person improve their chances of surviving something horrible, then it'll be worth it in Emma's name. So yes, that's what's next.
That is amazing. And I just love how you just hit the nail on the head with the, in Britain, there is that reactive culture. And coming from South Africa, where I was born and raised, that was a big shift for me that I struggled with when I got here, because in South Africa, it's a very proactive culture. So that was a big adjustment when I came here, and they were like, you only get to see the GP for 10 minutes and it's one problem you're allowed to talk about. And I was like,
Yeah,
what? What do you
pick a
mean?
problem.
Yeah, that was like a big mindset shift for me. I was like, okay, like in all fairness, in South Africa, most people have private medical aid. So you can go in, but you should go and see the GP, and you could be there in there for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and you can tell them everything that's wrong with you and they will help
Mm-hmm.
you with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And to go from that to, okay, 10 minutes and you get one problem. You get to talk about one
Absolutely.
problem.
You got a
That
chest
was a big,
infection or septic thumb. Like, which one are you going to pick?
yeah, which one? Roll the dice.
Oh
So that
man,
was
it's crazy.
really difficult for me. And
Mm.
when I came here, I fell pregnant pretty quickly. It wasn't planned. It was a surprise pregnancy. And going through that whole process, that was a difficult year for me to have to go through that whole process, this mindset shift and a
Yeah.
pregnancy all at the same time. Um,
How does it
so
work with
yeah,
pregnancy care in South Africa?
so in South Africa, you actually get, and this is one of the things that I struggled with. In South Africa, you get a scan. I mean, I stand to be corrected, but you get more regular scans.
Mm.
And that's a non-negotiable. So you go every couple of weeks and you're having a scan. And I know I had my friend at the time, we fell pregnant at the same time, and she was in South Africa and I was here. And she was going for her regular scans. And when she got to must have been about 30 weeks, and they picked up on her scan that there was an issue with the placenta. Now, had she not been having the regular scans, they wouldn't have picked it up, and
Mm.
the baby would have passed. She would have had a stillborn baby.
Oh, bless her.
So she had to go into hospital. She had to be monitored. They had her on bed rest until she eventually delivered. But had she not been having those scans, they wouldn't have picked it up. It's not something you can pick
No.
up. She had no symptoms. She was perfectly fine. And I think there was a tear in the placenta or something. And so the baby wasn't getting everything it needed.
Wow.
So, and that really freaked me out because I was here and I'd only had 2 scans. I'd
Yeah.
had was it the 12-week scan
Mm-hmm.
and the 20
20.
week scan, I think it was. That's all I'd had.
Mm.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
that really freaked me out at the time.
It's going to, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Because then I was thinking, oh my God, like, if there's something wrong with my baby, how will I know? How will I know? I'm not being scanned. So it's very scary and it's a big mindset shift. And like you say, other countries' healthcare is dealt with completely differently. But there are other, there is some element of funding, if I could say, whereas the NHS is completely free, where you don't get that in other countries.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we figure out that problem.
Well, I
But yeah,
genuinely think that we're getting to a point with the NHS where, and gosh, we need to protect it with our lives, don't we? Because what an incredible service it is, whereby I think more and more people are accessing private healthcare, and there'll be a shift eventually whereby the NHS also starts to rely more on a private healthcare offering. But, even having a clinic like ours, the pregnancy side of it, and now, the further diagnostic side means that hopefully we'll be reducing some of that burden on the NHS as well. So people who can afford it, who are able to access it through private health insurance, will do so. That's kind of how I see it going, really. And we work closely with the NHS, on referral pathways and things. It's important that people, especially through pregnancy, continue to access their NHS care. But it's just, it's hard to see how things like, we were talking about these 700 recommendations for maternity. I mean, that's just the maternity side of the NHS. I'm sure that every single department, in every hospital has these targets and these recommendations that they're trying to get through. And there's a limited amount of resource, isn't there?
100%. So Cocoon has been open for 2 years.
Yes.
And what is sort of the feedback then from the women that have come through the doors?
Oh, do you know, we have been so lucky with the people that have come through our doors. So we have supported in that 2-year period about 3,000 families, and it's a huge number. It's absolutely wild, when you look at it. And the overwhelming feedback that we get from people is, especially older people actually, who are maybe coming in with their sons or daughters, I really, really wish this existed when I was pregnant with my baby. And hearing that from women is just incredible, because you just think, do you know what, this has been needed for such a long time, and now we're able to provide it. And the number of emails, the feedback that we get in clinic, which is just like, you've just made this whole process so much better for me. Yeah, it just makes every day so worthwhile. It makes that shift from very stable corporate career, good salary, to building a whole new business and, feeling incredibly financially unstable. A lot more, yeah, just incredibly rewarding. You don't even really think about it in the day to day, you just bundle through, and then someone comes through the door and, burst into tears on the sofa because they've had such a terrible time, and then they go out feeling supported. Like, that's, there's no better feeling for us.
Yeah, that's the reward right there.
Mm.
And I was going to ask, so how did it feel going from this corporate, you've been in corporate for so long, you've flown to all these different countries, you've worked for a really good company that takes care of you, to turn your back on that and say, no, I've got something else I want to pursue. Like, what kept you going in those, because you must have had like those difficult days where you just felt like packing it in and going back to corporate. So what
Absolutely.
helped you get through those?
To be clear, I still have those days where I'm like, gosh, I wish I was still in that job, because it was so secure and it was so brilliant. But actually, Betty's and Taylor's do an incredible job of guiding you to where you need to be. So they have an internal development program that anyone in the business can access, where you have brilliant, brilliant personal development programs. I worked with an exec coach my whole time pretty much at Taylor's, and I was there for 11 years. She's called Caroline, and she was just brilliant. And they give you the tools to be able to not be there anymore. So essentially what they do from the start is they coach you into whatever your next step might be, and that might be within the business, but it might be outside of the business. I was a very different person when I left there than when I arrived, and that was all thanks to the support that I'd been given. I had an incredible boss, who I'd worked with for many, many years, and he was just so supportive. And I spent a lot of the time working there, working in sustainability. So the role that I did was very purpose driven, and the business supported me by funding half of my degree in sustainability, environment studies. So I actually handed my dissertation in. This was absolutely not recommended, but I handed my dissertation in 2 weeks after giving birth, which was pretty intense because my baby was born 2 weeks early, and I definitely thought I had enough time to write it before he came, but he had other ideas,
Oh
and
my
so that was a bit of a wild time. But yeah, so it was, they're incredibly supportive, like I say. So yeah, I definitely had those days where I felt like, oh my gosh, what have I done? This is really, really hard. But I also have ADHD, and the ADHD part of my personality doesn't ever think about what might go wrong. It just has this kind of eternal optimism, which, I just think as long as you are kind of optimistic about things, everything else will fall into place. So long may that continue, is what I say. There's not many times in my life where I'm thankful for having ADHD, but I definitely think that it's made me bolder, and I probably wouldn't have made the leaps that I've made if I wasn't ADHD.
I mean, that's a huge leap. That is a huge leap. And
Mm.
I think When I think about midlife and awakening, and this is why I wanted to do the podcast and why I'm so passionate about it, is because I think we get to this stage in our life and something within us awakens, whether it's a circumstance that awakens it or it's just something that's been lying beneath the surface and starts to come up that needs to be recognized. But sometimes it can be quite scary to realize that, well, I've built this whole life and it looks good, but it's not really what I'm supposed to be doing. And we know that on the inside, but we don't want to admit it. And so I guess my question is, what advice would you give anyone who is standing on that precipice of, like, this is what I really want to do, but I'm too scared?
Such a good question. And I'll kind of hark back a little bit to the personal development work we did at Taylor's, because one of the modules that we did was where we had to write our 80th birthday speech. And I was in a room full of people, and you had to deliver in front of all of these people your 80th birthday speech. And there was quite a few people in the room actually who were talking about their career and how they'd been working at this same organisation for many, many years. And I just kind of sat back and thought, you're really going to talk about that at your 80th birthday? I just think you need to be talking about the fact that you built a life that was so filled with purpose, so filled with meaning. So, what is your legacy here? What are you leaving behind? The thing that you think about the most, that is what your legacy will be. And the more you can lean into that and the more that you can grab hold of it and think, do you know what? How many weeks do you get on what's that book? Is it 4,000 weeks, is it called? That's the number of weeks you get in your life, and how many weeks have you had already and how many weeks have you got left? And yeah, I just think, gosh, you've just got to go for it. You've just got to go for it, because you'll just regret it if you don't. You'll just be thinking about it when you're writing your own 80th birthday speech. Well, I wish I'd done this. What I will say is that I'm very lucky in that I have a very supportive partner. So my husband, Ben, is incredibly supportive, and he's just like, you're absolutely crazy, but I'm here for you, whatever you need. And that does make a huge difference. And it is hard. It is hard when you go back to the beginning of something and you're starting from scratch and you're learning. But actually, that is it's a gift in so many ways. Like when I started this 2 years ago, I didn't know diddly squat about pregnancy. And now I feel like, I've picked so much up along the way, and we've been able to build this incredible business. You don't have to know everything about what you're about to do. You just have to feel passionately about it. And then you surround yourself by people who know what they're talking about. And you provide the passion, you provide the energy, you provide the motivation, and they provide the experience and the knowledge. And it's just fail safe. It really is fail safe. So that's my piece of advice. Employ people that are better than you and just love what you do.
I love that. Let them give life to your idea.
Exactly.
So if someone's listening and they feel really alone in miscarriage or pregnancy anxiety, what would you want them to hear today?
Gosh, it is so hard. There's no dressing it up. It's really, really hard. It's a very, very dark place to be. But there are places out there that can support you and help you. Zoe Clark Coates is I found her books invaluable. She's brilliant. Seek out organisations in your local area. So in and around like the north, taking baby steps are incredible. My former colleague at Taylor's, Steph, she went through an incredibly difficult postpartum period, and with postpartum psychosis and all sorts, she had a really, really tough time. And so because of her experience, she set up an organisation called Brighter Skies. I'm so proud of her. So she again so this is what I mean about Taylor's, Betty's and Taylor's. They push you to create the life that you should have. And so Steph's created this organisation called Brighter Skies, and they support people in families in the postpartum period. And she started that with her husband, Andrew. So yeah, there's loads of these organisations around that, that are on your side. Please, please, please seek them out. Ask for help. There's, phone lines that you can call. There's all sorts. You can be anonymous, but please lean into us because we want to help. We want to support.
Yes, and I'll put in the show notes, I'll put all the links for Cocoon and any other projects that you know of that you'd like people to be able to access. We can put that in the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So my last question to you, and I like to ask all my guests this question, is that looking back now, What would you tell your younger self if you had the
That question just nearly made me cry, actually. I think, um, sorry, I
It's
think I'd
okay.
like to tell her that she's enough just the way she is, because being a late diagnosed neurodivergent woman, self-diagnosed as well, actually, neurodivergent woman, I grew up thinking I was too much, too sensitive, overdramatic, all of these are phrases that were, that were said on repeat. And actually, it turns out that I'm none of those things. I'm just enough the way I am, and hopefully the life that I have built will in some way help other people to find who they really are as well.
Oh gosh, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I wish I was there to give you the biggest hug because you are
Let's
enough
have a
and
virtual
you're doing
one.
wonderful.
A virtual one.
You're doing you're doing some amazing work in this world, honestly, and you should be really, really proud of that. And
Thank you. You're
yeah,
so
I
kind.
feel so honored. I feel so honored that you've come on today to share your story and to share, the projects that you've launched and that you are launching. And I think, these are great initiatives and are going to help a lot of women.
Oh, thank you. I really hope so. And obviously, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. I really appreciate you having me on. And you'll have to come up and see us in Harrogate. Come hang out.
Yes. Yes, I will. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. See you soon.
Just want to take this opportunity to thank Sam again for coming on the show and for trusting me with Willow's story and for showing what's possible when pain gets to become purpose. If this episode moved you the way that it's moved me, I'll put everything you need in the show notes. Links to Cocoon, to Taking Baby Steps, to Brighter Skies, and to the books Sam mentioned today. Please don't sit with this alone. There are people who want to help you. If you're new here, hit follow so you don't miss next week's conversation. And if today's episode gave you a little comfort, a little courage, or just made you feel less alone, please leave a quick review. It genuinely helps the show and these stories reach the next woman who needs to hear them. Until next time, be kind to yourself, take care of your heart, and remember it's never too late to begin again. Bye for now.